So we're pleased to have you all aboard today for this orientation. And welcome to everybody. You're now part of the FNINR family. So yay for that. And Jess is going to move the slides along. So today our agenda covers a number of things. We're going to talk a bit about the vision and mission of FNINR, then the advocacy committee, and also today's speakers and who they are. And then we have some areas of content we really want to share with you, including the ambassador's role, the NINR and what it's all about. Many of you may know this, but others may not. And we're pleased that we have someone we'll introduce in a minute who's going to be here to share all those good things with you. And then the legislative budget process, and then connecting with your legislators. And finally, a wrap up. And we've got a really tight schedule, as Jess said, so hopefully we'll be able to cover everything we want. Okay, so FNINR, many of you may know, was actually founded in 1993. So it's been around for a while, and it is a separate nonprofit organization. The vision of FNINR is to improve health through expanding support for the National Institute of Nursing Research. And the mission is to strengthen and magnify NINR's impact in advancing nursing science. And you're going to be playing a key role in both of these things, the mission and the vision. Okay. Now, our advocacy committee is the group that really puts together these, not only the orientation you're getting today, but also any future forums we might have with you. And the chair of our committee is Terry Murray. And unfortunately, she couldn't be here today. She wanted to, but her mom is ill and is having surgery, and she just had to be with her. And then our vice chair, as you can see, is Diane Morrison-Beatty. And our other members are listed here for you to see. All of them are very active participants in our advocacy committee. Okay. And then our speakers today are going to include Rosina Cianelli, and she's from the University of Miami, and Courtney Aklin, who's our speaker from NINR, and she's the deputy director of NINR. And then Sandra Weiss, that's me. I'm from UC San Francisco, and I'm going to be also speaking. And then Phyllis Hansell, who's from Seton Hall University. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Cianelli. Rosina?
You're muted, Rosina.
Thank you, Sandra, for the introduction, and good afternoon, everybody. So welcome to be here with us today, and welcome as ambassador of the FNINR. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about ambassador role. So just you keep in mind this question: what is the overall goal of the ambassador program in which you were accepted? Can you put, if you want to put a question or thinking in the QA, you can do it. If no, we can respond at the end.
Or I think Jess has the poll up for them to respond to.
Yes.
Can you see the poll to respond? Oh, we don't see the response. No, Jess? In here?
I have it on my screen, and then I'll click to end the poll and share the results. Just give another like 5 seconds, and then we'll go ahead and share it. All right.
Let's see.
Pretty good.
Let's see. To advocate on behalf of nursing research. Excellent. Advocacy for nursing research. Perfect. Let's see. Improve funding and expand the view of nursing research. impact legislation to increase NINR funding, develop relationship with legislators to achieve this goal, and to advance for the priorities of Nursing Research Congress. Oh my gosh, you're fantastic. I don't think so that I need to continue with this presentation, Sandra. No. Excellent. Everything that you said is exactly what we want to do as part of the ambassador program. Can you move to the next slide? So I don't know if you read the slide before, but you know what we want to do is to extend the reach of advocacy effort through education, particularly to improve the funding and knowledge of NINR, and to enable, to support nursing scientists. So everything that you said is exactly what we want to do. We want to do more advocacy, particularly with legislators, so they know what NINR is about. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Next one. So what we want to do, what's our approach to achieve what we were mentioning? So the most important is that we develop relationship with state and federal legislators. And how we do that? We want to educate them, because believe it or not, many of them, they don't know about NINR in deep, and they don't know about the impact that nursing is making in the health of the constituent. So as number two, we share with them examples of research projects funded by NINR in which nurses are the PI. So we take examples in we can go to NIH, and in there we can see a lot of examples that we can bring. And what is important about that is that with that examples, we can discuss with the legislator the impact that nursing research is doing on their constituents. For example, I'm from Florida, so if I want to go and to talk to the Senator Marcos Rubio, I know he's very concerned about teenagers' health. So the most probably is that I will bring him examples that has been tackled by nurses, how we are doing studies in that. And from that, capturing his attention, we encourage him or other legislators to increase the funding for nursing research and training. So this is our main way how to approach, how we contact the legislator, what we do with them. Next one, yes. So what are the benefits for you to be part of this group of ambassadors? First, you will have access to different webinars and inside information about the NINR. You will have a comprehensive network of advocacy colleagues across the country. We have ambassadors, as you know, in almost all the states in the US. So it's easy to have a network, it's easy to connect with them. You will have the information of each of the ambassadors. Also, you will have the possibility to engage in real time federal health policy legislation. And so you are going to get recognition as FNINR ambassador, you know, at your university, at different events, including the Nightingale, the induction. Always there is a recognition for the ambassadors. And also you will start, or you will be more visible. There's peers that advocate for the NINR. So as you can see, there are a lot of things that you will get participating with us in this ambassador program. Well, that are the benefit, but we also have expectation. And expectation are also very important. So we want that you be present, that you participate in the different orientation webinars. For example, what are you doing today to be here with us? And there are not only today the new ambassadors, but there are also ambassadors who were become on board years ago. So we want to have you participating. We usually have 2 education sessions or a conference calls annually. So that's part of our activities. Also, in the page of the FNINR, there is a link where you will be submitting your quarterly report of all advocacy activities that you will be doing during the year. And that report, Jess usually look at them and see who is submitting the report, who is not, and she will contact you if we don't see any activity from you. So if you visit one of the legislators, if you email your legislator, if you are going to visit them when they are in your state, all of that need to be submitted through the link that is in the FNINR page. So we expect that you advocate for the NINR and nursing research in any circumstances where you are. Can be in healthcare related event, or can be, let's see, one time that the senator is meeting with the community in your state, or your state congress to also, we expect that you are present and you talk to them, you talk about NINR and how important it is for us to get more funded. And also you take that opportunity to tell them what are we doing as researchers. Also, you should serve as resources to members of Congress and the local media about particularly the impact of nursing research. So in a way, you are the visible face of the NINR in terms of presenting what nurses are doing in terms of research and why we need more support to continue doing what are we doing at this point. Next one. So,
sorry, bear with me. It went to the wrong slide. 1 second.
No, it's fine. So as you see, we will continue during the year working with the legislator. This year is a little bit different because elections, but other than that, usually on October, together with the Nightingale dinner, we go to DC and we go and visit the legislator, and we have also activities that we are doing as ambassador group. So other resources that you can have is the nursing community coalition. There are many other organizations that we as an ambassador of the FNINR are part. Next one, Jess. So as you know, the nursing coalition, we are member, and the NCC work closely with other nursing organizations. The same thing that I was talking to you, mutual goals, research, practice, education, because we are focused in the research component doesn't mean that we are not going also to advocate for education, for practice and regulation. So we work close to them. If they send a letter to legislator, be sure to subscribe and send to yours and continue working closely with them. Next one, yes. Perfect. So that's, thank you, Sandra. I don't know if you have any question. There is a feature for question and answer, just told me. So if you have any question, you can post there.
Also, please feel free to just ask your questions. Yes, sorry, Jess, you were saying something?
I was just gonna say there is one question in the Q&A. And yes, like Sandra said, if you want to just unmute yourself as well, that's fine during this section. So the question is from Sam, and it says, are we expected to go to the Nightingale dinner, trying to plan for the fall semester?
Well, we want that you go. Everybody should go. There is no support from us for that, but you know, it's wonderful to see all of you there. Usually, as I said before, we met during that time in DC, but this year, because it's an election year, we are not going to do that. And we go to visit also NIH when we are there, but this year is a little bit different. And sometimes, as we did last year, one member of our committee visit the different tables to introduce ourselves, particularly to the tables that we don't have an ambassador.
Yes, and I say to be sure you check with your own university and school, because if they have a table, you'll want to negotiate to be a part of it so you can attend. Yes, and Captain Kane is, am I correct?
That's correct. Thank you. Rosina, I have a question. One of the things is, you know, I've been in the DC area for 20 plus years and worked on Capitol Hill, and you talk about resources. One of the things I wanted to ask, is there a white paper or a one pager that we have access to that we can leave with the legislator?
Yes,
okay.
Excellent question. And everything is in the page of the FNINR.
Roger
you
that.
cannot imagine how good is that page. All the response, the question and responses are there.
And the other question is, can we make business cards with our ambassador title on there to leave?
You know, years ago, Sandra, remember we had that?
Yes, yes. But I see absolutely no reason why you couldn't do that on your own.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent idea. And we do recommend that you leave a card, even if it's not officially ambassador, you know, on the logo thing. But I think that's a great idea.
And if you do it, Captain, can you in the future share with us to see how it look, and maybe we can, other people will be interested too also. Thank you.
We are working on that. Just throwing that out. We are working on the business card thing on the FNINR side. Just.
Oh, fantastic.
Joan, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just on the business card, you know, I do like that idea. I think it's great. It's just also important to remember that you want to make sure when you're speaking to them that you also are mentioning that you're one of their constituents, because that is the bigger thing for them, more than we're part of FNINR. They want and they want to know that you're a constituent. So I think it's great. But when you put it on there, you know, just make sure that you are letting them know that you know, your vote matters.
Your vote.
Thank you.
Vote more than a person.
All right. Well, am I missing anybody else that had a comment or question? Otherwise, we'll move on to our next
There's
speaker.
one more,
more.
about the calendar of events, if they will receive a calendar of events.
So calendar of events, meaning for
What do you mean?
FNINR.
Yes, like when I'm looking, what I'm looking for is, as I'm planning for the fall semester, I am going to be at the Nightingale dinner. But if there's anything that we're going to be involved in or have the possibility to be involved in before or after, and that way I just need to know so that I can go ahead and I'd like to go ahead and get my travel plans solidified down before we go much
Yes.
further.
So
That's what I'm
important.
asking.
I agree. Some of our dilemma is always in terms of, like for the events we schedule in Washington, D.C., we often try to link them to the Community Nursing Coalition, and we don't know sometimes all the details of that until near the time it's going to happen. But we are trying so much to do just what you said, including for our forums, to plan them ahead so that they can get on everybody's calendar. It is important. Thanks for bringing that up. Okay, well, then I think we'll move on. Thank you for your great questions and comments. So we'll go to our next speaker. And this is Dr. Courtney Aklin, who's Deputy Director of NINR. And we're so pleased to have you with us. I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sandra. I am so excited to be here in front of all of you today and wish you a good afternoon. And I want to just really start off and say that I'm very excited to have this conversation and to see all of you coming in and want to share with you some of the great things that are happening at NINR. But before I get started, I wanted to take a moment to thank all of you as I reflected upon the goal of the ambassador program and coming in and hearing some of this conversation. I wanted to specifically say to you that thank you for your commitment to educating and supporting us through partnering with organizations, having the conversation with our congressional members, and seeking to improve funding so that we can enhance the knowledge and continue to move forward in enabling the scientific breakthroughs that we have always done. And also in training our nurse scientists, truly appreciate the role that you are taking on. My goal with this discussion today is to give you information that you need to help reach those goals of this program. Next slide, please. Thank you. And so to assist in the quest to educate about NINR, I'd like to share a little bit of background about NINR. And I'm sure for many of you, some of this is a repeat, but it's also just my opportunity to come in and set the ground in terms of what we're thinking. The National Institute of Nursing Research is one of 27 institutes and centers that make up NIH as a whole. And at NIH, though, NINR is the institute solely positioned to set the agenda for nursing research across the country. And we're really proud to be able to do that. NINR is dedicated to improving individual, family, community health through scientific research. It is the goal that's been longstanding at NINR, but what is exciting for us are the many activities that collectively we're moving forward in a direction to achieve this goal. So first, we are aiming to advance the science of nursing by fostering cutting-edge research and innovation, which I'll point to a couple of specific examples in a moment. But we're also committed to improving health overall in terms of outcomes by making sure that we're translating research into evidence-based interventions and policies that can be available to all. But we value diversity and inclusivity as well, as we're working to build a research workforce that reflects the diversity of perspectives, backgrounds, and life experiences that will allow us to better address the health disparities and the social injustices that are prevalent in the communities we serve and where we conduct our research. We're also striving to empower nurses in research by providing opportunities for career and professional development. We see this as crucial, a very important component of training the next generation of nurse scientists. We will continue to foster research and community collaborations and partnerships that focus on these health solutions for people in the context of their lives and in the living conditions across the many settings where nurses are already practicing. Next slide, please. So I wanted to show you this picture. Our website, if you haven't been on it recently, has been revamped to really hone in and be very clear in the direction that we're going in. And as you see here, advancing health equity into the future, I will say our biggest take-home message that lies within this mission is a focus on leading nursing research for a healthier, equitable future. Kind of considered a little bit of a tagline that really drives what we do, what we support, and what we're building. But I will say it's also a very personal mission for me, as it is what brought me to NINR. For all of you, I'm still fairly new, and I will use that title as long as they allow me to say it, to NINR. And I'm not a nurse. I'm a clinical psychologist by training, but I've spent several years practicing in many of the same settings as nurses and having a very similar desire to remove the obstacles and uplift strengths of our communities so that any individual has the ability to have optimal health. So to achieve our mission at NINR, we are really looking, actually you can stay on that same slide. I haven't quite gotten there yet. Sorry, took a quick deep breath. Is really to identify those pressing health challenges, but to also now find solutions that are oriented and to research what's the root and the social determinants of health to help address these challenges and advance health equity, and to bring nursing research to the table and to lead a strategic partnership at NIH that aims to address these challenges through a cross-disciplinary and multi-sectional approach. Next slide, please. So our mission is broad, it is bold, it is impactful. It is meant to be that way, to focus in on the destination of health equity. So what I'm sharing with you now is an image that depicts our current strategic plan, which serves as the map to help us reach that destination. Our strategic plan, how we want to make sure that we're leveraging strengths, is unique in the knowledge and perspectives that we bring from the discipline of nursing, with the idea that we want to benefit all. As you'll notice on this slide, it illustrates our research framework, which is the backbone of our strategic plan. It has 5 areas that it covers, which we're referring to as lenses. So you can see here, health equity, social determinants of health, population and community health, prevention and health promotion, and systems and model of care along the bottom. When we say lenses, though, what we're really describing is a perspective through which we examine these health challenges that I outlined a little bit earlier, like maternal health, for example, firearm injury and prevention, pain, and many other topic areas that come across our desk. But I'm sure you'll notice that at the top are sort of larger circles, being health equity and social determinants of health. This is by design, because we truly believe that by applying health equity or social determinants of health lens will give us the opportunity to extend the work in the areas below, magnify and impact those scientific discoveries, with implications, though, for informing policy and practice, again, in the settings where nurses currently are. But through this approach, we really hope to move past only identifying treating symptoms and looking specifically at solutions that can truly improve the daily life for individuals and the communities for which we're involved. So again, really appreciating the opportunity to sit in front of you and to share this framework with others, because this is what we're really using to drive to meet health equity. Next slide, please. So now that I've provided a little bit of information that can be used to educate others about NINR, I want to shift just to provide examples of the research projects that we are funding so that you can too share that work that NINR is supporting. And I'll underscore that these are examples. And obviously we spend quite a bit of money to support various different investigators. But one I want to bring to your attention in particular is a study that's being funded to Johns Hopkins University, where they're looking at the extent that housing policies that were enacted during COVID-19 affected the receipt of substance use treatment and overdose risk. I think for anyone who has been paying attention to the news and the scientific trends that are going on right now, there is a significant concern in overuse of different medications as well as drugs. But the plan here is to conduct an in-depth qualitative interview with people who have recent history of drug use, as well as the providers and the policy officials within urban and rural counties, with the intent to yield evidence that can then inform policy and the development, also looking at housing and the role that housing has played in this particular space. But the idea overall is to design and enhance a treatment that could prevent overdose. So it's looking at it at different levels, looking at it across different organizations, with the idea that we really want to affect policy change. So again, really great that you have the opportunity to get in front of congressional members, but also to look to affect practice. Next slide, please. And with a focus on maternal health, another area that has been a lot of discussion in terms of trying to get it right, a lot of discussion within NIH, but for us particularly, here's an example of a study from New York City that has been funded by us that is looking and evaluating a multi-level effects of using citywide doula. It's their initiative into an integrated model of care on maternal health outcomes, with the goal of trying to see if they could use this model to be replicable and improving overall maternal health equity by engaging doulas in this situation. But what is innovative about this study is its focus on not just the solution, but taking that solution and really looking to see, is there an opportunity to affect health policy? So they're actually doing research at that intersection as well. But like these researchers, NINR believes that in order to move things forward also involves a very strong connection to the community and making sure that the questions we're asking and the solutions we are developing are in a partnered way to produce scientific rigor that can demonstrate these effects. Next slide, please. Another study that's been funded by NINR more recently is looking at uncontrolled asthma in Black adults and working to identify new places to intervene and to move beyond what's been considered standard medical treatment and standard medical care. The researchers here started off with the idea that we already know that the air we breathe impacts our health. And for some people are exposed to indoor air quality that was already bad to begin with. So how do we decide on where climate change affects that and where we can intervene? For example, higher rates of gas stoves in low-income housing that has inadequate ventilation may contribute to even poorer health or exacerbate the situation, especially for people living with chronic conditions like asthma. Existing research has shown this link in children, but this team is actually exploring this connection with adults as well. The research is incorporating factors that go beyond just healthcare. So again, also looking into housing, but looking into air quality and the ability to be able to measure it on an easier standpoint so that we can then address better outcomes for management of asthma. Next slide, please. So one of the things we've also recognized as we opened up and put together a framework is the opportunity to talk about a strategic imperative. And you may have heard us refer to this in various different talks. But for us, the strategic imperative is taking a very specific topic and really honing in, providing additional resources to be able to address it. And for us, we had a strategic imperative on firearm injury prevention. Our investment in firearm injury prevention research is starting to produce results. As you can see here, one in particular way is that working with the social determinants of health lens is looking at racism as an important example of how that impacts the health of well-being in Americans. So Dr. Sing Fong, who you'll see is part of a team who conducted this study to really look at racism, firearm injury risk, and the mental distress in Asian Americans, which if you can think back to the timing around COVID was a significant concern that still continues to play out now. They've already reported that racism aimed at Asian Americans has been associated with increased mental distress and carrying and using firearms, and that association is even stronger now than it was at the time when we were seeing it in the news. So what they found is that this mental distress mediated by the link between racism and carrying firearms is so important to address and to address that straight on. Next slide, please. Also important to our strategic imperative is identifying areas where nursing and looking at nursing in terms of the holistic picture and how nurses address healthcare can have a significant impact. As I mentioned, there is this critical gap in our research related to firearm injury prevention and having it be available in community settings. In September of 2023, we posted a funding opportunity announcement asking to look at firearm injury prevention research in community healthcare settings. And under this initiative, NINR has been very interested in novel and creative approaches. And you'll hear me use the term innovation and novel quite a bit, and it's because we are growing and expanding and what we are focused specifically in. The other thing I will say is that this opportunity that we've put out approaches the ability to look at the contribution of nurses and integrating the principles of a holistic nursing care. The first round of applications have come in. They were received in November of 2023, and we have a second round actually on the street now with a due date in July. So again, something to share as you're having conversations about NINR. These are opportunities that we are hoping will be able to provide great impact on at the individual, family, and community level. Next slide, please. So now that I've shared just a couple of examples of the types of research projects that we do support, I wanted to take a few minutes to lay out information about how we fund ideas in general. You'll likely be quite familiar with the research grant mechanism. It's typically what NIH talks about as its bread and butter, and where most of our investigators do come in for funding support. And that's at the R01 level, R21s being smaller sort of exploratory grants. But what I would like to highlight for you is the small business mechanism. And these are ways to support research ideas while working in concert with businesses to develop products and tools. A concrete example is a recently awarded SBIR that uses an AI platform to compile data for public sources to improve healthcare price transparency. Handle Health was the term of the tool that has been developed as a mobile application to actually simplify the healthcare price estimate, billing, and payment process. Their aim is to use the technology to improve healthcare access for all, but to reduce the medical debt for specific that minority disparity populations tend to see through clear cost estimates and more accurate billing. I'm going to talk a little bit more about training grants in the next slide, so I'll go ahead and skip to that one. Okay. Earlier, I mentioned that there are areas of emphasis for us in training the next generation. It is such an important component that you'll see that specifically mentioned in our strategic plan as well. But what I want to recognize is that in order to do this, in order to truly support the next generation, we must provide opportunities that run across the entire continuum of funding opportunities. So looking to support individual career development, to those that also provide funds to universities and other institutions to support targeted program and curriculum development. So depicted here are some of the training programs that NINR has available to enhance our up-and-coming scientists. Examples include the National Research Service Award, or the Ruth Kirstein Award, as you'll see here is listed in 2 different buckets, is designed to, one, in our T32, bring funding to institutions to support and bring in students and scholars that's in a very specific targeted area at that particular university. But it's also our way of honing in on one of our research linges to support training in social determinants of health. You'll also notice that there are very ones for graduate students that are directly meant to support their own individual projects and research. So again, sticking along the continuum. But as we move further along the career ladder, there are also opportunities to support early faculty through K Awards, which provides devoted, and I'll underscore devoted time and resources for them to grow their own research labs. And lastly, there are education project grant awards as well, the R25s that you see, that are specifically designed to support topic area curriculum development. And I'm really proud to say one of the most recently released R25 focused, again, on expertise building and social determinants of health. The entire suite of options can be found on our website, so I won't go much further into detail, but just to give you a flavor of some of the opportunities for training that we support. Next slide, please. We also continue to invest in a wide variety of individual and institutional grants that are aimed specifically at promoting diversity in the scientific workforce. This is an incredibly important area for us. It's an area that has been longstanding for support from NINR that we want to continue. But just to give you an example, we use administrative supplements to existing NIH awards that facilitate recruitment and support of students, postdocs, and eligible investigators from diverse backgrounds. This one in particular is one that we accept 3 rounds a year, January 15th, April 15th, and August 15th. So as you can see, with this being right around the corner, the next receipt date being in August, we would love for your help in spreading the word about this opportunity, as it's often underutilized. And it's such a great opportunity because it gives additional funding to the parent grant to support students. So it's sort of a win-win. The investigator gets additional money, but it also gives additional time and focus and resources for individuals to come and do their work. Next slide, please. And just to take a moment to really hit home the fact that funding to our external investigators is really the priority for NINR. If you take a look at this slide and you add up the research project grants, the research training, the other research, and the research centers, you'll notice that 3/4 of our budget goes towards supporting extramural investigators, and that is key and will not change in how NINR supports the research that's going on. It is incredibly important to us that our investigators get the opportunity to hone in and do the research that is important. You'll notice that last fourth really is about keeping the trains running, is what I like to call it. It is where we do produce some of our own science, which is tagged by intramural research at 7%. But the RMS that you'll see there is also just the ability to be able to keep up and keep the lights on, for example, and run NINR. And last slide, please. Again, I just want to underscore how important it is for us to support NINR and to support the work that you all are stepping into to do and welcome you into the conversation. We're really, over the next course of several years, moving to highlight and make sure that NINR is visible and has a place at NIH and across, quite frankly, other entities to show just what nursing science can do and to make sure that we stay really vital and visible. I'm here for a little bit longer if anyone has questions, if we have time for that, that is.
Yes, we definitely have time. And thank you so much for those really helpful comments. So questions for our speaker, Dr. Aklin?
Should I call in folks or do you want to do so?
Well, I
Sandra?
think we can see them popping up usually. Is there somebody's hand up?
I do see a
Yes.
digital hand.
Oh, please, yes, go ahead. I'm sorry. There's a little okay over there.
Hi, I'm Dr. Ruche. I thank you for your presentation. I was just curious about that last slide, second to the last one. Could you talk a little bit about that? Is that funding for the year or?
Sure.
I didn't understand what it is. Thank you.
Okay, so we typically do our funding in a fiscal year. We are allocated our budget through congressional appropriation as well. And so what you're taking a look at is the snapshot within the fiscal year in terms of how we divvy up the pie, so to speak. And so that is what you're looking at, is a year-long snapshot and a fiscal year, which for us runs September to October.
That answer your question?
So I'm looking at dollars in thousands and I see research project grants 140,000. Is that all or are we talking million?
So when you conflate it together, it does equal actually millions. So it is a little bit leading if you look at it. So it's 143.53, but that's in thousands. So that number is 143,530 aggregated by thousand. So really, when you're looking at this, that number is larger. It is not just $140,000. No, we spend quite a bit more than that. Thank you.
But good attention to detail there. Thank you for questioning that. Nancy.
Thank you. Yes, I wondered whether you know offhand or have a rough idea of what the percentage of people who are funded compared to the percentage of people who apply in terms of what that proportion looks like compared to other NIH institutes. And I'll just say why I'm asking this is because as a nurse researcher, I would love to have NINR research funding, but when I look to NIH to apply, I get feedback, well, they don't have a lot of money compared to other institutes, so you probably have a better chance if you go to this institute instead. And so I feel strongly that nurses should apply under NINR, but so do you have an idea of how proportionally the funding goes compared to the number of people who submit compared to other institutes, if you understand the question?
No. I understand your question. I'll have to say, I don't have the data readily on hand to speak to specific percentages, but what I can say is that if you're talking about sort of acceptance rates, right, in terms of those who apply versus those who actually obtain funding,
Right.
We absolutely want to see nursing researchers here. We don't go by a strict pay line, and there's a reason for that. It gives us the opportunity to really look at the scientific aspects and the match to our strategic plan. So I'd say the answer really is, please do come in, have conversations with our program staff, because we do have the opportunity to pick up grants based on the fit, as well as obviously the scientific rigor. But we are a little bit different in that we don't stick to a strict pay line, whereas some of the other institutes do. And I'll sort of leave that there. Hopefully that addresses your question.
It does. I'm looking forward to advocating for NINR to be where people submit. So thank you.
Please, thank you.
Renee,
Oh, did Renee disappear? I saw
You're
her.
muted, Renee.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was muted. So similar but different. So I am actually now the benefit as a co-I on an NINR funded grant. It only took 8 applications in 8 years, but thank you. And yet I'm not the PI, and I was originally invited 8 years ago because of the thought that you had to have a nurse researcher in order to get funding from NINR. And while I told them that really wasn't true, it has brought that question of, okay, so it's called the National Institute of Nursing Research. You did a great job, and I so appreciated how many times you talked about nurse science and nurse research, but how many nurse researchers are actually funded by NINR, since there is no requirement that you be a nurse to receive funding from NINR?
So again, I am a really big proponent of data. So I don't want to speak and respond to that question without having the very specific numbers. But what I can tell you that I am aware of is that when it comes to nursing scientists, we still support the vast majority of nursing scientists in comparison to the other institutes. With that being said, you're absolutely right that it is not just an institute that supports nursing science, but I will also say the reason for that is we do much better when we look at multidisciplinaries, when we look at an interdisciplinary approach. Team science is the direction that we are headed in, quite frankly, but nursing science has always been in that space. I mean, even if you look at the way nurses practice right now, for example, and you take out specifically looking at research, we practice as an integrated group. And so it's one of the things that I think that we should be mindful about as well. And I'm not sure if I specifically addressed your question, but that is the best answer I have, absent of giving you specific numbers.
I think it absolutely fits. And it's why, even though I had said that to the research group, we meet every Monday, and pretty much every other Monday, there's a comment of, oh, this is why Dr. Manwarn is part of this team, because we didn't know this. We didn't know this piece. And for the rest of you, it's shocking to me the things that I think are just common sense that the surgeons, engineers on this project have absolutely no idea about, and I wouldn't have even put it in a course for a nurse. So I appreciate that interdisciplinary, and I think NINR has really led the way.
Wonderful. Continue to preach that, please, because that is, an underscore. And one of the reasons, like I said, that I felt more comfortable coming over to NINR, not necessarily being a nurse, but understanding that clinical application and the space of what that actually means and how that allows us to be better scientists because of that space. So thank you.
Jess, do we have any in the Q&A?
Not for Dr. Aklin.
Okay. Any other questions for Dr. Aklin before we thank her again? Well, excellent. We appreciate so much your being here and look forward to future interactions with you as we move forward advocating for NINR.
I as well. And again, thank you so much for the work that you all are doing. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Sandra, hi. Michelle Mitchell here with NINR as well. I was lucky enough actually to present before your group last year at your orientation on the congressional piece. So I'm the Legislative Affairs Officer here at NINR, and just wanted to say hello and to also echo the thanks from Dr. Aklin. We really appreciate all of the work that you all are doing. I did get to hear some of the questions before Dr. Aklin began presenting, and I shared a copy of our one-page fact sheet. Someone asked about leave behinds. So I wanted to make sure you guys had that handy. It is on NINR's website, but I just emailed it to Jess. So she is going to share that with you all after the meeting, but those are very helpful leave behinds for members and staff. It details all of NINR's priorities, as well as talks a little bit more about the funding and the different areas, some of the other questions that you guys were asking. So just wanted to make sure you had that handy and to say hello.
Yes, great. And thanks so much for introducing yourself and saying hi to us.
Of course.
Renee, excuse me. Yeah, Renee, did you want to say something?
Oh, no, I was just thanking
Oh,
Dr.
okay,
Mitchell.
sorry, I saw the hand, but it was yeah. Thank you. Great. Well,
Yeah.
okay. Yes.
And thank you, Michelle. I was just going to say my apologies for not introducing you at the top of my conversation. Without Michelle, obviously, a lot of this would be very difficult. She is our main point of contact and conduit to FNINR, and she's a rock star. So thank you, Michelle. Apologies for missing
Thank
it.
you. That's okay. Thank you. All right. Well,
Yeah,
you
we're
guys
lucky
can
to
certainly.
have.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. It's been a pleasure working with you all, and I'm excited about all the new faces I see on here, some that I've met at other events too. So I do look forward to working with you guys in this capacity. So please reach out if you do have any other questions later. We're always happy to help.
Super. Thanks.
All right. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I did want to build on what was just said about that one pager for NINR. And as Rosina mentioned earlier, we do have this in response to a question. We do have a policy statement that we also have developed. So that's a one pager. So there are a number of those resources, which you'll hear a bit more about later. And Jess is going to walk through some of that near the end, some of the resources available to you. So let's move on with the discussion of the legislative budget process. So this is, you know, quite complex in many ways, but once you get accustomed to it, I think it'll feel, you know, comfortable to you. All right, let's move on. So we have another question for you we'd like you to respond to. What month do you think legislators are on recess? Okay.
3 seconds. Just does anyone have any last things to get in? And all right, here we go.
So you're going to share that, are you, Jess?
Yep.
Everybody can see that. Yes. Well, you know, there's a lot of you that are correct. It is August. So thank you for that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide in terms of not only August, but a couple other things to take into consideration. So I'm trying to get rid of this whole thing. I'm sorry. So that middle bullet deals with the August piece you just scored. But in addition, the House members typically spend about a week of each month at home. So it's important for you to become aware of all of their schedules for those legislators you're working with in your particular area and find out just about when they are available and when they're not. And that's on their websites. Okay. Now, this is about the staff, the congressional staff. Sometimes we have this false belief that we try to connect with the legislator, they're not available, we end up talking with the staff, and gosh, that was not what we really wanted. However, the staff are just critical and very, very important contacts. So there are 3 types of staff to be aware of. The congressional office. These are staff that the legislators rely on so heavily because they have tremendous knowledge and information about what's going on. I mean, their whole role is to inform themselves so that they can be resources to the legislator. And the staff input then is really a huge factor in influencing the legislator. So developing that relationship can be really a super investment. Then there are the staff at district offices, and these staff members, they don't handle legislative portfolios, but they are really relaying the kinds of concerns that constituents have to the lawmakers. They're evaluating local problems and communicating the local impact of federal programs. And that's where, as was mentioned earlier, when you're able to relate certain types of legislation and the priorities of NINR to things that are happening in the constituency, then that's an excellent way of engaging and pulling in the legislator and the staff. And then there are these important committees that exist. And there are staff members specifically for those committees. And we'll talk a little bit about some of those in a minute. But these are subject matter experts on particular issues that are addressed by their respective committees. And so clearly they also can be much more informed and really important to talk to about some of the ways that we want to advocate for nursing research. Okay. Now, the budget process on the federal level has three major steps. And in a minute, we'll look at a bit more about how it all moves and moves forward. But these steps include, first of all, the president's budget request. And this occurs typically around February 1st, but it's always never on time. And then it reflects the administration's fiscal policies and priorities. And as you well know, this changes depending upon the administration. But it's an interactive process between the federal agencies that are going to be funded ultimately, and the Office of Budget and Management, which serves the president and is really one of the ways in which not only these budgets are determined that the president wants to put forward, but also monitoring those budgets as things move forward. The second big piece then is congressional budget resolution. And so this typically happens around April 15th. And the House and Senate committees, the process involves them deciding how much can be spent, and then specified amounts are sent to their appropriations committees to really decide on fund allocation. And the committees meet to discuss proposed allocations in their areas of focus. And we'll talk a bit more about that in a second. And then the third big step is enacting budget legislation. And that's around October 1st. And here's where the House and Senate committees actually propose their funding. And then the proposals go to a conference committee for debate and reconciliation before going to the president. And so again, you'll see in a second what that whole process looks like. Okay. Now I'm going to just take 1 minute so that I can, do I have control now? Okay, so I wanted to be able to use my mouse. Can you all see my mouse moving around? Yeah? I don't know, nobody's letting me know. You don't see it, huh? Oh dear. Well, okay, so I'll just do my best regardless. So here at the far left, what you're seeing is the whole process of what we just talked about, where the Office of Budget and Management provides guidelines to the different agencies, such as NINH. And, oh, thank you, that's it. Thank you for doing that. And that process then goes to, it's a very interactive one down that line on the left, where OMB talks with the different agencies, gets their input on what they want. NINR is allowed to put forward their particular request to NIH, and then NIH submits that. And so there's feedback as to whether that's really realistic from the president's perspective or not. And ultimately, then on the bottom far left, the OBM, excuse me, compiles this final budget based upon that interaction that goes on between NIH and the president's office. And so then, with the president's agreement, he goes ahead, or she, and submits the budget request to the two different chambers. And as you see, one chamber goes up and that's the House. And so it goes to the House Budget Committee. And then on the far right, it goes over to the Senate Budget Committee at the same time. And so they each have their processes, as you can see, that follow a similar line all the way up, where they have these subcommittees under the Appropriations Committee that look at all the different aspects of the budget that's been put forward by their different chambers. And, you know, the one that we often have the greatest interest in is the subcommittee on labor, health and human services, education and related agencies. And so they discuss in detail the kinds of funding that, and that's where NIH funding really stems from, that they want to propose. So advocacy that's influencing some of the legislation of those subcommittees, as well as then ultimately the appropriations committee, which is that next step on each side, Senate and the House. That is going to be a real target for where we want advocacy efforts. And then, as you guys know, just from being either a part of the process yourself in the past or even watching television, you know, there's a lot of often disagreement between the House and the Senate about what the budgets should look like. So that conference committee that you see there in the center is really where some of these budget distinctions and resolution occurs after it goes to both the Senate and the House for final approval by their members, because they can't submit a budget to the president unless they have some kind of agreement about that budget. And so those two middle areas you see down below, the budget resolution, where the Senate and the House have to come to some agreement, at least to start, about the amounts that they're going to put forward. And then the conference committee above that, where the final kinds of agreements and debate have to occur. And as you probably are quite aware, you know, often they're not on time in being able to put this budget forward to the president because there are disagreements that have to be addressed. And it takes a lot of negotiations, but ultimately does go to the president. So that's the annual budget process, and your advocacy, our advocacy, really takes place primarily at the subcommittee appropriations level, as well as the full appropriations committee level. And then with your legislators in your districts, all the way up to when they're voting on it, either in the Senate or in the House. Okay, Jess. Thank you. So now for NINR's budget, I mean, as we just saw, you know, all of that's going on for the larger budget, but part of that process that happens with the Office of Budget and Management is where NINR the director puts forward the request. It's negotiated with the NIH director and ultimately then goes to the Office of Budget and Management. Now, this is an example from 2023. And as you can see, the original budget that was put forward was $198,670,000. And then the House and the Senate each had differing recommendations for what they thought should be given to NINR. And then the final appropriation, after all of that debate and discussion that we talked about occurred, was the $197,693,000. Now, the 2024 fiscal year budget was a continuing resolution where they actually received the exact same amount that they had in 2023. And for the upcoming fiscal year, the negotiations that are going on now, the president's budget put forward it was a $570,000 increase for this coming fiscal year. But unfortunately, and this is why our advocacy is so important, the House, the chair of the House Appropriations Committee just a couple of weeks ago gave notice that likely they are going to propose a 10 to 11% cut in the NIH budget. And so as you can imagine, that if it occurs, of course, it has to go through all those processes. The Senate may buffer that. The Senate may, you know, come back with very different kinds of recommendations. But if it was to go through, then that could be a 10 to 11% cut in the NINR budget if they did it across the board. Or if the NIH director, for instance, decided that certain institutes had to be preserved and other institutes had to even take bigger cuts, that could take place. So you can see how important your advocacy is going to be in this process as we move forward over this year. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next one. So then you'll have a chance to ask questions and we can talk more about this in a bit. But here's another question for the poll. What are the types of spending that occur?
Can you explain the question, types of spending that occur?
It's very broad. Why don't we just move on, because that is sort of hard for them to answer. I think just there, I just saw there are no things to check. So okay, these are the types of spending. Sorry about that, folks. And you can see here that there are two major categories. First of all, the mandatory, or what they also call entitlement spending. And that's things like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. So, we don't really need to be advocating around those unless there was some huge proposal that came forward that was to get rid of them or cut them dramatically. But the discretionary funding, that type of spending is where we can have a huge impact. And you can see there that this equals about a third of the overall budget, discretionary funding. And about half of that is for defense. So that leaves then the other half of discretionary funding, where all of these different decisions are made about what NIH gets and other kinds of health-related agencies. And it is strongly influenced by Congress and who's in Congress at any point in time, because they have to approve it. And as you see, it's, where the NINR budget comes from. Now, I just wanted to, say a minute here. When I mentioned about that decrease that has been proposed by the House Appropriations Committee, and they actually are going to make their final markup on that. I think it's around June 27th. So there's still, maybe a week to go before they make that decision. But that's where you can see they would have a huge influence in this discretionary funding. And the proposal was just for the non-defense funding. The other thing I wanted to mention before we go to the next slide is just that there's also a very important report that just came out from the Energy and Commerce Committee of the House. And in that report, they are proposing to restructure, reorganize NIH, as well as to have greater transparency. And one of their big goals is to have the institutes within NIH be more responsive to the priorities of Congress rather than sort of setting their own priorities. But the important part of this report, and we've got to be actively engaged and advocating around this, is that they propose that NINR will actually not be a separate institute anymore, but that it will be integrated with 4 other centers and institutes. One of those is the National Institute of Minority Health and Disparities, because there are very similar priorities in NINR and that institute, as well as Environmental Health Sciences, the Fogarty Center, and trying to remember what the 4th one is. But what it would do is that they're proposing to create a new institute on health sciences research from these different 5 centers and institutes. And as you think about the implications of that for nursing research and the visibility of nursing research, whether, we don't know what would happen if that occurs. So this is a report, but, it's got to have lots of debate still across both houses, and obviously from the president's office. But more important than that is our engagement in the process and advocating with our legislators about this as it's brought to discussion, being able to present in front of committees about the impact of this on nursing care, et cetera, if in fact this was to go forward. Okay, sorry for that, but go ahead, Jess. All right, so now let's have time for some questions before we move on.
this is actually more of an academic question, but can we reuse your slide? The slide for your budget process was much better than the one I had ever come up with. So can we reuse your slide?
Sure. In
Thank
fact,
you.
we typically put the slide deck on our the website that Jess is going to talk with you about a little later, where resources are. Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments about any of the legislative process?
So where could we get that report? Because I'm sure there must be a rationale in the report of why those particular agencies.
Well,
I can appreciate
yes.
that with NINR changing its strategic plan. There's been a lot of discussion of, isn't it the same as minority health? And so why not combine those? I'm wondering, and I have no idea, is the other one the women's health, which is also, they also are the lowest funded ones, I believe, other than you didn't mention.
Actually, I just looked at my notes. It's the National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health.
So they took the ones that had the lowest funding, essentially.
Well,
those
many
are all
of
the,
them.
yeah, those are all the lowest ones. And
but I do want to clarify that it's just, they're not just targeting those. There are all sorts of recommendations. So they're doing the same thing with many of the other existing institutes. They've left some of the big ones like NCI and NIMH alone, but there are even heart, lung, and blood is proposed to be integrated with a few others. So, they're not just targeting NINR. Just wanted to clarify that.
And I wonder too, and this may explain my question to Dr. Aklin, was because we have always stressed that NINR does not fund nurses, yet our legislators are well aware that we have a critical nursing shortage and seem to be very engaged in how can we help, how can we get more people to be nurses, and yet we're not seeing that translation to NINR, perhaps because we've been successful in messaging that NINR doesn't fund nurses. Maybe we need to change that message.
Good point. Good point. Well, that's something that you can definitely share with your legislator, and thank you for raising it with others.
Is the question in the chat, Sandra?
Yeah. Go ahead and read that, would you?
Yeah. Would you please restate what institutes are being proposed to be combined with NINR?
Right. So now remember that, again, they're not just targeting NINR, but these are, and we will, by the way, I'll give the report to Jess and she can send that out to all of you so that you can look at all the details because it's quite extensive. And there's also a one-page summary that might be useful for you. So it would be a larger institute called National Institute on Health Sciences Research. And the 5 that would be combined under that would be environmental health sciences, minority health and health disparities, the National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health, Fogarty International Center, and NINR. Okay, any other questions or comments? If not, then we'll move on to Dr. Hansell.
And I have a question. I put it in the chat.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem.
Please,
To clarify, when did you say a decision will be made about combining the institutes, including NINR?
That report just came out last week. And so, I'm sure that discussion will go on for a year before anything would occur. I mean, legislation would have to be changed. And they're asking for engagement. They make it very clear that they want all of the health professionals and the researchers to be providing input. And so, there's opportunity for that because it's just opening up now for discussion. It's not going to happen overnight. It wouldn't happen next year even. It would be for the future. Okay. But, we've got to start informing people now about the negative impact that could have. And it all comes back to nursing care. We've got to show how NINR is improving nursing care and the health of people. in ways that are unique and different from other institutes. So we have to maintain our identity.
So
I mean,
if I
I
can-
already know.
would that
if I-
then be a focus of what this group would be advocating for, is maintaining NINR?
Well, it certainly is something that we will be talking more about. But yes, it's one area that we must, I think, advocate for. Yeah. And this all is just emerging now. I mean, there's been discussion about it over the last 6 to 8 months that it might be coming. But
Yeah, I've been hearing rumors. So,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
if I can share an antidote of how important this is, and this just brought back the memories. In 2013 was the first time I think we heard that the government was going to shut down because of budgets, and actually did. It was the year that I was being inducted into the academy, and therefore Washington was closed. I'm from Texas. My daughter, it was going to be her first chance to come to Washington. She was kind of upset because it was going to be closed, so she wouldn't see anything. And I said, well, write a letter to Senator Ted Cruz and tell him that as a Texan, you want to see Washington, and your mom's getting this award and it's going to be closed. And could he open it up? I don't have any evidence of a connection, but she did get a letter back, and it was opened up before I was inducted. So I was there, and then she arrived, and boom, she got to go to the Smithsonian. So I can't help but wonder, was it that letter from that 10-year-old that said, hey, can you open up the federal government for my mom and me?
yeah. Well, it's so true. I mean, we forget that sometimes each individual advocacy effort can make such a difference. And so it's well worth your time and effort to do anything you can. We're going to have to move on, so we have time to cover our next section. So thank you all for your good comments and questions. We're going to move to Dr. Hansell now. Thank you.
Good afternoon, especially a warm welcome to our new ambassadors. Probably one of the most important elements of your role is connecting with the legislators. So first and foremost, can I have the next slide, please? You need to know who your representatives are. Now, I'm from New Jersey, and I have been connecting with legislators for the past 20 years. And my own legislator has changed at least 3 times because of the movement of the districts. I don't know how true that is in other states, but in New Jersey, it seems to be a regular occurrence, especially in the area where I live. Get to know your representatives. Learn about them on their websites. Sign up for their newsletters. Find out what they're all about. Follow them on social media as well. Some are more out there than others, but what is important is that you connect with the senator, with the legislator, congressperson that represents you, because as a member of their constituency, you have power and impact. And that will open up the door for you to get inside of their offices. Next slide. So make sure, first and foremost, you know your senator. Both Senate and House have appropriation committees with a focus on health and human services. They also have health subcommittees for other major committees, e.g. House Ways and Means, Senate Finance Committee. There's a nursing caucus, and one of the things that is important is you encourage your particular legislators in the House and in the Senate to join the nursing caucus. I think from past years, our numbers are down just because of people rotating out of office and new people coming in. So make it a priority to ask your congressperson and senator to join the nursing caucus. mean, David Joyce has been the co-chair for quite some time. He's from Ohio, very, very supportive of the profession. And I don't know Jeff Merkley from Oregon, but I've met David Joyce in person at various receptions. Very, very strong supporter of the profession. Next slide. Research the legislators' voting record. You know, they all have their priorities, and nursing may or may not fit within it, but it's your job to convince them that nursing should be a priority. As I said earlier, review the legislators' website and social media to understand their priorities. Okay, legislative aids. Legislators have offices in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill, but they also have offices in their district. Some legislators have as many as 4 offices, depending upon the geographic size of their district. It's important to connect as a priority with the staff on Capitol Hill. And typically in each office, there will be an expert on healthcare. You get to know that person. In the more than 20 years that I have been visiting Capitol Hill, I can count on one hand the number of congresspersons that I have met with. Almost always it's the staff member. So get to know the staff member who is responsible for healthcare activities. They evaluate legislation, they write legislation, they are highly knowledgeable, and you need to forge a connection with them and get to know them well. And they'll be very responsive to your emails and letters when they realize who you are. So I would say they do more than gather and synthesize information. They really oftentimes are creative, very bright, mostly young individuals do these jobs. The staff, so long as the person maintains their office, usually is pretty consistent. I haven't seen much turnover. Most of the promotion is within, and the chief of staff is the most important person in the office. I believe they can have a chief of staff in their district offices, or they can choose to have one chief of staff that oversees all of the offices. So each office has a degree of uniqueness to it. Making an appointment. At my institution, usually had to get permission or connect with the government affairs office. And usually there's an expert at most universities called the Director of Government Affairs. My government affairs office also has a lobbying firm that they contract with. And that's how my appointments were made, by the lobbying firm. When you make appointments or have them make appointments for you, sometimes they're not aware of the distances you may have to walk. So make sure they schedule the appointments at least a half an hour apart. Because if you have a meeting in Rayburn, for example, with your congressman, and then you have to go over to Hart on the other side of the Capitol to meet with one of your senators, that's going to take you probably a good 20 minutes to walk. And you always want to be on time and punctual for these meetings. It doesn't fare well if you keep them waiting, or you may even miss your slot. Next slide. As I said earlier, make contact with the Capitol Hill office rather than their district office. Don't expect to speak with a legislator personally. Rarely will that occur, and usually it's spontaneous that they pop out of their office while you're in meeting if they see that an item is important enough. Identify yourself as a constituent, and that's what opens the door. Now, you only get to vote where you live. However, you may be employed in another district. And where I'm employed, the campus is actually represented by 2 different congressmen. So I use that as access to those congressmen as well. Always have concise and compelling talking points prepared. Describe the issue, make your request, explain its importance in compelling facts for support, and explain the relevance to the legislators district. A comment I would make, just going back to the staff, is that the health care expert in the office, staffer, will have thorough understanding of the legislation. However, they may need help understanding the impact and how nursing makes a difference. Some of them may even need to develop a better understanding of what nursing is. And, you know, that includes the congressional representative as well, or the senator. In my particular state, you know, Senator Cory Booker, he's very much on board with us, and he doesn't require much work, and his staff are very, very much with nursing and the work that we do. But other districts may need, and other states may need more work. Next slide.
Phyllis, I just wanted to mention that we're getting close to the end, but I'm hoping that people will stay on for a few minutes. We just have a little bit more to go, and then Jess does have some important information she wants to share with you too. So
okay, always emphasize the health impact of nursing research. Increased funding for research training and discovery will improve nursing care. Breakthroughs in research help lower healthcare costs. And nursing research significantly strengthens the health of individuals, families, and communities. Use your personal expertise to provide examples as well. Information to provide key points, a one-pager about yourself regarding your position and role with FNINR, and contact information. Next. Suggestions for success. Be on time, but be flexible. Have a soundbite. Be clear about the ask. Be yourself. Be respectful and appreciative. And back up the ask with data. Following the meeting, suggests that legislators invite Dr. Zenk, the NINR director, to meet and discuss the impact of NINR research. Invite legislators to visit your institution or other settings where nursing research is being conducted, and attend local town halls and other meetings where funding for health is being discussed, and educate the community regarding the relevance of nursing research wherever possible. Following the visit, make sure you write a thank you note, preferably a handwritten note. It's quite effective. If not a handwritten note, an email. And maintain contact with the staffer that you have met with, and they will open doors for you. Thank you. Are there any questions?
we have time for about one question. As you know, we're sort of running over here. Thank you. Great input for us, Phyllis. I don't see any. Well, you'll have a chance to look over the slides if you wish. And then please do feel free to contact us, any of the speakers or Jess or anyone about your questions in the future. So Jess, why don't we just move on to your piece because it is so important.
Sure, thank you. So just a couple of notes that I can also send out in an email so everything's top of your inbox. So you're going to get a survey after this, and included in the survey, not just for your feedback, is an RSVP for the Ambassador Luncheon that we are planning to hold on October 30th, the same day as the Night Gala. It will likely be at 12 noon Eastern to 1:30, although that's not completely finalized, so you'll find out about that more from me. But it's a tentative RSVP, so you can get a count. I'll tell you more about the spotlight in the email. What's most important from this is the Basecamp. So we have been using an ambassador portal on the FNINR website. However, we have recently started a transition to Basecamp, which I don't know if anyone has used before, but it's a project management tool that is good for both storing information and for providing like a forum for communication between ambassadors. So you can have messages back and forth on there. We can have discussion topics, information, everything that would be shared that you can share when you meet with your legislators will be available on that platform. You'll get an invitation to your email. It might go to your spam, just heads up, but it will be to join the Basecamp for AMR management services. Okay, so once you get that, then you'll be able to join the Basecamp and provide more of a interactive kind of forum between the ambassadors, so we don't just have to rely on these meetings to talk with each other. And like I said, I'll provide all this information in an email, so it's all right there for you, but that's that on my end.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you to Rosina and Phyllis for your great comments and input for everyone to glean from. And mostly to all of you for attending. You know, it was just wonderful having you here, and we're so thrilled to have you part of our ambassador family. So looking forward to working with you in the future. And again, you know, happy summer. See you all soon.